This is Tyler O'Neill, managing editor at the Daily Signal. I'm honored to be joined by Mehek Cooke, who is a surrogate with the Trump campaign and with the Republican National Committee. Mehek, it's great to have you here.
Tyler, thank you so much for the opportunity. What an amazing, historic time to be alive and at the RNC.
Yeah, no, talk about it. I mean, I think one of the most exciting pieces of news we had came yesterday morning when we learned that the Trump documents case had been dismissed because Jack Smith was illegally appointed by Merrick Garland. Can you walk us through like where this leaves Trump? Because that was long considered to be the strongest of the cases against him. Now it's dead, at least for now.
It is, and I think lawfare is dead, and this is going to continue to backfire amongst Democrats. As you see what's happening in the rule of law today, it's really white and black, Tyler. We had the Supreme Court specifically state that the president enjoys presidential immunity for official acts. That means when we look at a lot of these cases, you've nailed it, from the hush money case, which I think is the documents case, that should have never been brought. Judge Merchan has already pushed that sentencing and had a delay in it. That case is going to go away, and so many others are going to crumble because this was the largest liability case. And when you talk again about presidential immunity, we've enjoyed that. Well, presidents have enjoyed that for 200 years. So to use this by the Biden campaign to try and knock Trump out of office, running for office, trying to make him a convicted felon really did backfire. And thank God for the Supreme Court. They were a backstop for democracy, for the rule of law. So all of these cases are going to be pushed out and eventually go away.
I just keep thinking, you know, if these cases were what they say they were, why were they filed in 2023 instead of 2022 or 2021? Like, the timing seems very suspect. And now, you know, it's a win that the cases are delayed. I'm not saying it's not a win, but it seems bizarre to me. The Supreme Court makes a very clear ruling upholding presidential immunity, you know, as you said, absolute immunity, and then, you know, presumptive immunity for certain acts. And this is the way that it's been in our country for forever. Like, the president is fulfilling his constitutional duties. He shouldn't be, you know, indicted for talking with his attorney general. And yet that's what we're seeing. And, you know, the perverseness of it all. Would you speak to that and say, you know, where we are in this battle?
Well, I think that Biden and his campaign has continued to try and take Trump down. Remember, they tried to take down his business. They tried to take out his family. They tried to take out the fact that he was even appearing on certain ballots. And then they go after him in terms of his official acts. This is what happens. Lawfare tends to backfire. And then there was an assassination attempt. When I tell you he is the most targeted president in U.S. history, it is on every single level, and he is still running to make America great. He is still running to ensure that the rule of law is upheld, because if they can do this to a presidential contender and former president, can you imagine? None of us are safe if the rule of law is not abided by. So I truly think this was a tactic by the Biden and Democratic machine that has continued to implode, and the American people are waking up. Saturday, that assassination attempt was a wake-up call for America. Biden has targeted Trump, and it is game over for his party, and that's why they're not trying to replace him today. Have you noticed the conversation has shifted? No loser wants to run against President Trump. No loser. Nobody on that Democrat stage is raising their hand anymore saying replace him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the most perverse ways we've seen Americans targeted, and I mean President Trump also in this way, but there's an organization called the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but they brand mainstream conservative and Christian groups, many of whom worked with Trump, hate groups, and put them on a map with the Ku Klux Klan. And they're suggesting that conservatism is evil and hatred. I mean, I wrote a book about it, so I'm very focused on it. But I've seen the Biden administration work with this organization that has been widely discredited. They had a sexual harassment scandal and a racial discrimination scandal leading their president to be ousted and their co-founder to be fired. And I'm wondering if you've seen them involved in any of these legal cases or any of the legal cases that you've worked on?
Look, I haven't, and I don't have a lot of knowledge or background on that particular organization, but I truly believe that these are cult organizations that work with Democrats, and they come out in droves, and they genuinely target good working, hard working, whether it's Christians, Jewish people, I mean, you name it. You will be oppressed if you are not standing tall to the Democrat Party talking points, and you're watching them implode because they don't represent black voters, they don't represent Hispanics, they don't represent Asians. Democrats turn their back on the working class American people, and everybody is seeing it today. And we're all banding together, black, Jewish, Christian, you name it. We are the party of the future. We are the unity party, and we're with President Trump 100%.
Well, and as you recently told me, you were born in India but raised in Ohio. Can you talk, from the perspective as a legal immigrant about the immigration crisis and the border crisis in this country, how it's affecting many Americans? I think the left loves to peddle this lie that it's all about race. And, for me, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, Hispanic, anything. If you're breaking our laws to come into this country, a lot of Iranians are white, just like I ostensibly am. And yet I'm more concerned about them coming into this country than, black people from Nigeria. But it's, how does it relate to you? How do you feel on the issue? And what would you say about the Democratic points there?
Well, look, I always say I was born in India, made in America, made in Ohio, really, if you want to break it down. But my family came here legally. And when your first act in this country is illegal because Biden has an open border, he has allowed over 11 million illegal immigrants to come in, ransack between crime. Open border policy has pushed fentanyl, the one pill can kill. It has continued to just ransack our families and ruin lives. That is a devastating impact on every single American that lives here that's trying to work hard and earn a paycheck. But think about the implications for legal immigrants that are proud Americans. We have worked really hard to come to this country, to make ends meet, to follow the rule of law, and then you're allowing an open border. And look, I practiced immigration law for many years. I watched hard-working Hispanic families to Indian families, you name it, put two pennies together to try and apply for naturalization or asylum. These cases aren't cheap. This paperwork, this process in America, that's where we need to focus and fix it, not to just open the border, let these illegals come into our cities, allow them to have food stamps or credit cards or free housing. That is not a system of justice that's fair. And by the way, if your first act is a criminal act, what are we teaching the rest of the American families and culture? It's okay to commit a crime because you've allowed illegals to come in here, ransack us, kill us, and continue this abysmal crisis. It's Biden's crime crisis. It's awful.
Well, and I think you hit on it has economic effects as well. I mean, our American families are struggling with inflation, propped up by government spending, and now they're spending more to help the illegal aliens at the expense of other Americans.
You're 100% right. I think everybody should go to Bidenomics.com. Americans for Prosperity has an amazing website, which literally will resonate with every single American because they go from gas, groceries, 20.1%. I mean, they go through every single purchase that we make as American citizens and tell us what our prices have been under Bidenomics. We're being crushed today with inflationary policies that don't allow us to put food on the table. And then you look at Biden's open border. He allowed this. This was intentional. He did not allow the Remain in Mexico policy, which would have allowed for people to remain in Mexico and wait. He opened up the floodgates, which has truly devastated our economy.
Yeah. And so pivoting gears a little bit, talking about this poverty, we just saw President Trump name his running mate, JD Vance, the senator from the great state of Ohio, whose book, Hillbilly Elegy, has inspired a movement, really, really hit on the issues that Americans are struggling with. Would you talk about JD? Was this a great pick? And what does this show about Trump's character? What have you seen about JD's character?
Well, Tyler, I think we were talking a little bit before, and I said back in April, I was speaking to the Hill, and I said, JD is the guy. And I'll tell you why. When I first read Hillbilly Elegy, it was during COVID. I was actually not reading. It was an oral tape. I was listening to it, an audio tape, as I was driving to South Dakota with my husband, biggest, most open state during COVID. And I heard the voice of JD Vance, a young boy at the time, grew up in the Rust Belt, poverty, and worked his way up to go to law school, to make something of himself, to come back to the state of Ohio and to give back. This is the American dream. This is the kind of future that we want for our kids and future generations. JD is a force multiplier for MAGA. He believes in making sure that he always contributes to the little guy, to the working class. He understands what it means to balance a checkbook. He understands what crime does to families. He understands poverty on a level that many people don't. And so who better than to create a generational movement of prosperity? President Trump put America first because this is a legacy move. It's not about the next 4 years or 8. It's about the next 12 years. I believe that is how long it will take for us to get out of Biden's crosshairs with the crazy inflationary policies in crime and put America back on track.
Yeah, getting out of Biden's crosshairs, Biden's bullseye, as he put it. I mean, where were you when you heard the news and of the horrific shooting on Saturday, and what do you think it shows about the state of our country today?
You know, I was actually on Fox News with Shannon Bream right before. I talked about how great President Trump was. I talked about his message of unity, and I talked about the Teamsters president coming to the RNC to talk about unity and the working class and how hard President Trump is working in swing states. And then I stepped away, and I was feeding my 2 children, and it was in the background. It took several phone calls before it even registered because I'm looking at the TV, nothing's connecting. I'm looking at my small children, nothing's connecting. And a friend called to say, Mehek, the president has been shot at. And I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget looking at my kids. I'll never forget praying. I'll never forget the fact that I thought that we could have lost him because of DE&I policies that Biden put in place, because of the fact that the Secret Service did not do their job, because of the fact that there's so much hatred by Biden and Democrats. That was horrifying. And by the grace of God, he was saved. And I am so thankful we are here today. And it's only because he continues to unify. He stood up. And did you see that, Tyler? There's no teleprompter. He stood up. He put his fist up in the air and he said, fight, fight, fight. And I'll tell you why. He cares about the American people. He doesn't need to be scripted like Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard it was almost miraculous. You know, he almost never looks at the teleprompters, and yet he looked up at the teleprompter at exactly the right moment. And so his head was in a little bit of a different angle for the bullet to hit the ear instead of the brain. And I mean, how close did we come to the unthinkable?
Well, the fact that you had a shooter that many people said, we have somebody up there. There's somebody up there with a gun. Nothing happened. We were an inch away from losing one of the greatest presidents in my lifetime. And it's because of the mediocrity of this administration, a dereliction of duty. And if Biden had any common sense today, the first thing he should have done was apologize and then fire this DE&I hire, because that's what this leads you. DE&I leads you to DIE, because we lost a great man, fire chief, husband, father, you name it.
Yeah.
Under the watch of Kim Cheadle. She should be fired. Shame on her and shame on Joe Biden. This is a crime family that has continued. When you peddle in crime schemes, when you peddle in Ukraine funding, when you peddle in Russia and all the other things Hunter has done, the big guys continue to allow this in his administration. Just look at what almost happened to our greatest president, President Trump.
Do you think that there was an intentional dereliction of duty there? You're talking about DEI policies, which I think, she prioritized diversity as so many of these Biden picks have. And, the fact that they're prioritizing diversity over doing their job is one of the most shocking and, un-American things, I would say. But, we also heard reports, I don't know how confirmed they are, that police knew that there was someone there that, and do you think that there was an intentional decision from the Secret Service, or is that something you're going to wait on?
Look, I think the intentional decision was that we didn't have enough Secret Service. The intentional decision was that we had fill-in officers that were not trained to protect a former president. These are all decisions that are intentional. And the fact that we had a close to a half-an-inch assassination attempt, all of this is intentional. And I hope every single employer is looking at DE&I and realizing what is at stake. When you don't base employment based on merit, this is what it leads you to: death, destruction, and this is not what America is. This is not what the American dream is. We need to get back on track. I'm an Indian immigrant. I want to be hired not because I'm a woman, not because I'm an immigrant, but because I can perform the job to the best of the abilities that the job description states. And no, you shouldn't hire me to protect President Trump, because I don't have the stature of a 6'1" man. I mean, look at me. I'm like 5'6.5" stretched.
Yeah. Well, I think you might be a little taller than me, but you're not hiring me to protect President Trump either. I just loved, and I mean, I think we should probably wrap up, but I just loved that moment where he lifted his fist. I thought those 2 seconds defined his character so much.
I mean, he is the American gladiator, and we saw a picture that is worth a lifetime, a legacy, and a movement. And none of it was scripted. That is who he is. He shows up for the American people time and time again. Look at the RNC convention. He is here for us.
Yeah, he came here. The Secret Service said no. They said wait 2 days, and he came anyway. And I'm just like, this man.
God love him.
Well, anyway, thank you so much, Mehek, for joining us here at the Daily Signal. Is there anything else you want to say?
I am just so excited. I think every single person that is looking at President Trump and JD Vance, the target is on him now. Please do your research. Please don't listen to mainstream media. There's so much that meets the eye to JD Vance in terms of his record and the future generation of prosperity that he'll bring. Do the research. Don't listen to mainstream media. I believe he's going to continue to make America great again. This is the best unity ticket.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mehek. Again, this is Tyler O'Neill with the Daily Signal, signing off.
Thank you.